Hi there, welcome to About That. I'm Andrew Chang. In a lot of ways, the pandemic froze time. Like for years, we were in this kind of stasis, right? You couldn't go anywhere, you couldn't do anything. Life was very much on hold. If you were thinking of maybe meeting someone and starting a family, boy, that was tough. And for women whose biological clocks are always ticking, and obviously if they even want kids in the first place, freezing one's eggs can seem like an appealing option.
There's been a rise in elective egg freezing among women during COVID-19.
A recent study shows more women decided to freeze their eggs for future fertility treatments.
Once a solution designed solely for women who might struggle to conceive because of serious medical conditions like cancer, egg freezing is now a mainstream elective process.
I was fortunate enough to be able to do this and come out of the pandemic with this insurance and this backup plan that I have a little bit more time to find the perfect person to start a family with.
Now, there's a lot that goes into that process, especially if you're in your mid to late 30s. So our producer, Lauren Bird, looked into why more women are making this decision and what's involved.
Hey, I'm Lauren. So I started doing some research on egg freezing because I was wondering if it's something I should be doing. And it turns out I'm definitely not alone in thinking about this.
Freezing my eggs has given me so much peace of mind because I don't feel like I need to go on every single date and be at every single app.
I'm not married, I'm 33. I want to have more kids, inshallah. I want to see where I'm at. I feel like it's nothing to be embarrassed about, you know?
Guaranteeing that I can have kids is worth every painful, weird, self-stabbing moment that I have to go through on this journey.
Ultimately, I'm someone who's always wanted kids, and I feel so fortunate that this is a decision that I've been empowered to be able to make.
Because we all know that once you hit 30, for a lot of women, a mental clock starts ticking.
So my name is Safina Adatia, and I'm a second-year family medicine resident at McGill University. For me, I knew that having a baby before 35 or getting pregnant and things like that would have been really challenging, just given my career. And so learning about fertility options during medical school, which is such a privileged thing to be able to know about, was something that I knew that there was a way that I could give myself peace of mind and have a backup plan and freeze my eggs. And so it just felt like it was the right time. And I was turning 32 and I was like, this is a good time for me to have good, high quality eggs and just make sure that I'm protecting myself for the future.
My name is Christina Mukahi. My partner and I had broken up. And I remember the first thing that I thought about was, I'm 31 and I have to, maybe the next person that I meet has to be the person that I have children with. And I remember thinking right away that that wasn't right and it wasn't fair, that, I only had 4 years until the internet tells me I'm having a potential geriatric pregnancy if I decide to have children. First it started, you know what, I want to have answers. I want to know, I want to understand my fertility. But everything was totally normal. But even then, if I wanted to have kids, I'd still have to start thinking about that in the next few years. And so I decided to freeze my eggs.
And the pandemic has only exacerbated that. About 10 years ago, choosing to freeze your eggs for non-medical reasons was considered an experimental procedure. Since then, though, the number of procedures reported has increased steadily. And in 2021, those numbers spiked to nearly double the previous years. And that's despite a period of shutdown because of COVID.
I think that made people kind of really rethink their lives and decide to either delay childbearing or just rethink their options for the future, just because it was such a shift in everybody's way of thinking.
Because here's the thing. If you were 32 years old in early 2020 and were thinking, I still have time to figure this out, the whole process of getting pregnant and having a baby, and for some, that might mean finding a partner. There was still time, right? But then the pandemic hit and life stood still, but time didn't.
I wasn't sure when I'd be able to start dating again with the pandemic and how long it would go on. I think at first we thought it would just be 2 weeks, then we'd be good to go and move back to our lives. And as we know, we were kind of locked inside for 2 years.
I really feel bad for women who entered the pandemic in their early 30s. The pandemic just stole those years from us. So I do I understand. And again, for some women, this is a great option. The question is whether it's a great option for many women or as many women as we think.
So how do you know if it's a good option for you? Well, there's a lot of things to consider here, and the more I read into it, the more I realized it's not quite as simple as it can be made out to be. Basically, it's injecting hormones to encourage your body to release as many mature eggs as possible in one cycle. They get extracted and immediately frozen, so while you get older, your eggs stay the same age. That's important because as we age, the quality of our eggs diminishes, and it makes it harder to have a healthy pregnancy. For some women who choose to do this, they think of it as an insurance policy.
It's been such a relief to know that I have this as an option should things not work out after I, get older and I decide that this is something that I want. I think it's so nice to have that backup plan.
I think that it's given me just the power to control my future. I also feel like if I decide that I want to have children now or at 40, I can make that decision or not.
And it can be an expensive decision to make. In Canada, elective egg freezing isn't covered by provincial health plans. On average, it's going to cost about $10,000 to go through the egg retrieval process, and another roughly $5,000 for medication, which may or may not be covered by your insurance. And then there's a yearly storage fee, which is about $300 to $500 a year. So if you're planning on storing them for, let's say, 5 years, that's $1,500 to $2,500 in storage alone. And that brings the total to about $16,500 to $17,500 for just one round of egg freezing. And that's assuming you only do one cycle.
I know that freezing eggs is a big investment. For me, it's an insurance policy. That's how I kind of figure it. It's insurance on my fertility. It's peace of mind. And it's taking back control of my life.
But here's the thing.
It is not a 100% guaranteed option, but maybe it is a good option. I would encourage everyone to think through all of the implications. That's all. Really all of them, not just the ones you're told by the people who, let's face it, are selling you a product, but all of the implications. And maybe it is a good option.
So let's talk about those. When it comes to your odds, the biggest factor is age. Here's the data from Brigham and Women's Hospital in the US. And you can see, after the age of 35, the probability of getting a live birth from frozen eggs goes down pretty steadily. And that's why freezing as many mature eggs as possible is critical. And when you're older, getting more eggs in one treatment is just harder.
I would not call it an insurance policy, and I wouldn't even call this really an investment, because I think even with an investment, you get to watch it grow and decide when to cash it in. But here you don't. Here you don't know the quality of your investment until you pay more money and go through more interventions. Maybe it'll work out, like truly, maybe it'll work out, and maybe it won't.
I know that it's not for sure, but the odds are pretty good. And I think I would rather work with those odds than nothing at all.
Some of you might be wondering, what now? What are my options? Is egg freezing a viable alternative? After the break, I'll speak with fertility specialist Dr. Chawla Mehta. Hey, welcome back. I'm Lauren Bird. I'm a producer with About That. So today we're talking about social egg freezing and how many more women are choosing to freeze their eggs. And we have a lot of questions about this. So we're going to go ask an expert. Dr. Chawla Mehta, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Lauren, for having me here.
So you're a fertility specialist at the Trio Fertility Clinic here in Toronto.
Right.
And so if you are kind of approaching that critical age, mid-30s, and you're thinking about doing this, what is maybe the number one thing you should be considering?
So definitely we should be conscious of our fertility around the age of 35, depending on what our goals are. But at the same time, it's not like 35 is a magical number. But we know that things starts to change, right? Because we as women, we are born with a certain number of eggs, unlike men who make a new sperm cycle every 3 months. So as we age, our quality of eggs starts to change. The number of eggs starts to decline, and that's because every month we are losing a certain number of eggs. And around the age of 35 is when we say that things starts to change significantly as to our chances of getting pregnant starts to reduce. Our chances of having a miscarriage starts to increase because the chromosomal abnormality in the egg starts to increase. The acute bend, however, comes, Lauren, around the age of 37, 38, and that's the reason we want to be conscious around the age of 35, because we want to take our reproductive goals in our hand. We want to have the opportunity to assess our fertility, to get the assessments done, and then plan accordingly so that we still have the potential to preserve eggs, to work towards a reproductive goal, especially if having a child from your own genetics is extremely important to us, right?
We've heard from a lot of women that they consider this an insurance policy. What do you think of that?
I necessarily wouldn't consider this as an insurance policy because there's no guarantee that we will have a pregnancy from those eggs, but definitely an opportunity, right? An opportunity to take control over your fertility, especially if in case you're delaying pregnancy for one or the other reason. That's the only thing that you can do for yourself in regards to fertility preservation. Because we have to remember that one aspect is the egg, but the other aspect is also the sperm that goes along to fertilize the egg. And not all eggs will be mature. Not all eggs will fertilize, and not all fertilized eggs will grow to give us day 5 or day 6 embryos. Not all embryos will be normal, and not every normal embryo will implant, right? So there's always going to be loss in numbers there. But at least it's an opportunity, and it's an opportunity to have a pregnancy from your own genetics if that's what your goals are in future.
Can you explain that loss a little bit more? So that's like, that is no matter how many eggs you get, there is going to be a loss along the way.
So there's strength in the numbers and the age at which you freeze your eggs, right? Because the more number of eggs you have frozen, the higher the chances of pregnancy, and the age at which these eggs were frozen. Because as we age, the chromosomes in the egg starts to abnormally divide. And because the chromosomes divide abnormally, we have a higher number of abnormal pregnancies and a higher rate of miscarriages. Okay. So one important question that any woman should ask if they are considering egg freezing or at their initial consult after the fertility assessment is completed is that what are the number of eggs that they would expect from an egg freezing cycle? Because every woman is different, right? It's not one size fits all. So every woman would be different in regards to what their fertility potential would be, and how many cycles of egg freezing would they have to undergo to get the desired number of eggs so as to kind of ensure a successful pregnancy in future.
And so what is that kind of number you would be looking for? Is there a standard number that you're thinking, that's kind of what you want to be able to freeze?
It depends on your age. So typically we do like to freeze 15 to 20 eggs, but then the number of eggs that we freeze also correlates to what your age is when you've frozen your eggs, right? Because if you have 15 to 20 eggs frozen at the age of 30, definitely our chances of success with those eggs is much better than if we had 15 to 20 eggs that were frozen at the age of 35 or 39.
Do you see a lot of people coming in and having to do more than one round? Is that common?
That's very common, right? Because it also depends on the age and the ovarian reserve, like we say.
Like, what is that process like for women going through it?
I wouldn't say it's easy, but at the same time, it's not as difficult as it seems to be. The initial assessment is the most important, right? And then that involves your blood work and ultrasound. After that, you would meet with your fertility specialist in regards to making a protocol and understanding the process. And it is a time commitment. It does involve injections over a period of 8 to 12 days, and where you would also be coming in for blood work and ultrasound monitoring, maybe about 3 or 4 times in the cycle. The procedure is done under sedation, local anesthesia.
What are the things that we don't know about this procedure?
So women are much more conscious now than 2014. Over the last few years, I think the consciousness has really increased in regards to social egg freezing, fertility preservation, and I think COVID has also played an important aspect in regards to that, because people had to put their lives on hold, and they realized that, their age where they would have actually wanted to have pregnancies, their fertility potential has declined. And life happens, and it's the unknown, right? Yeah. The unknown that kind of just it affected everyone. And even women who were planning to get pregnant put everything on hold because, one, you don't know how the disease is going to impact the pregnancy, right? What the severity of the disease would be in women who were pregnant. And as you know, women really, really got sick when they got COVID in pregnancy, and then the loss from jobs. So in fact, Health Canada did do a study, and as is, Canada is considered to be a low fertility index country. And the fertility significantly declined from 2018 to 2020 following COVID, right? Because people put everything on hold. Yeah. And there were women who did want to go. We know a number of patients who actually wanted to pursue through the IVF cycle using their own eggs or undergo egg freezing, because we do have an age cutoff generally around the age of 39 for egg freezing, because that's when we say the quality of the eggs significantly starts to change. It's not you can't do fertility preservation following the age of 39. You can consider other options as embryo freezing, but at the same time, if you just wanted to freeze your eggs, then that is an opportunity that was kind of lost. Right?
Yeah, totally.
So,
were you seeing more women coming in and doing egg freezing at your clinic?
Quite a few. I think at all clinics, in fact. Yeah.
Like, how could you quantify that? Would you be able to say how many?
That would really be difficult to say, Lauren, but I would say a significant portion of our consults is also just social egg freezing, or women even just wanting to assess their fertility. And women in their 20s and 30s are also coming in just to get the initial fertility assessments completed.
That's really interesting.
So I see a lot of women going to their family physicians and requesting a referral, and many patients say we just want to do fertility assessment so that we can plan our reproductive goals accordingly, right? And especially because we are not well informed, about fertility aspect when we are growing up. We are told your career and, you have to achieve and you have big dreams, and which is great. We all want to have big dreams and we want to go for that. But what's not discussed is that what else are you putting on hold? Where does your fertility fit into it? And if your achieving big dreams also involves, having a child of your own, then I think it's a great idea for us to consider egg freezing at a younger age.
Dr. Chalamata, thank you so much.
Thank you, Lauren, for having me here. It's been a pleasure.
Hey there, welcome back to About That. Lauren Bird here in studio to put a nice little bow on things. And I guess my first question is, Lauren, did you get the answers you were looking for? Because at the very start, you had said you were kind of like personally interested in this, right? Looking into it.
Absolutely. I was very curious about it. I was one of the women caught in that pandemic pause, Yeah. And so it's been something kind of in the back of my mind for a long time. And do I have the answers that I was looking for? I don't know.
Well, because it seems like there are answers to be found everywhere, no matter where you look.
Exactly.
They're not all correct, depending on where you look, but it's hard, right, to get the information.
Totally. And, I found myself falling down that trap on social media and seeing so many women doing this. I think every part of this process is probably documented by somebody on TikTok. And even clinics, they show you how they do it. There's so much information out there. And, one of the things we hear again and again is this really made, this allowed women to feel empowered to take a little bit of control over their fertility.
Right. And so did you arrive at a sort of a clear path, like a starting path for women who are thinking, okay, I've hit a certain age, I'm not sure. I think maybe I'm interested in freezing my eggs just to keep options open for later. But what's actually sort of step number one? What did your research find in that term?
Yeah, well, the women that we spoke to, they said that they didn't know even where their fertility stood, right? One of the only measurements we see is your age, and that's important, but there are other factors that play into it, your genetics and your environment and all of these things. And so getting kind of a clear picture of where all of that stuff lands is really important. And that is the first thing that you can do.
So how do you do that? Is there?
Well, you can just go to your doctor, your family doctor, and ask for, some of these tests that you can do. So they'll do blood tests and they'll do an ultrasound. And the blood test will measure your hormones to see what your levels are like. And the ultrasound will actually go in and tell you your ovarian reserve. So that's how many eggs you actually have available. So that's hugely important. And that is the first thing you do even before they will go through with the egg freezing process. So that can happen at the fertility clinic, or it can happen at your GP. And some provinces even cover it.
Oh, okay, covered by healthcare.
Yeah, and one of the things that one clinic told me was that women will start this process thinking, I want to freeze my eggs. And they will go to the clinic, get this testing, and realize, oh, I'm actually in a pretty good place. You know, my levels are good, my eggs are good. I've got time, and decide to not freeze their eggs at that point.
Oh, that's interesting.
They might do it down the road, but at least it gives them an idea of where they're at.
Right, because that baseline fertility testing doesn't just give you a snapshot of you like in the moment. It can also give you a sense of your long-term.
Your timeline, yeah.
Right. Okay, that's interesting. So where do we end up? Because at some point, I mean, so a woman could go through that sort of fertility testing, may ultimately decide, no, you know what, freezing my eggs is what I think is my best option going forward. I want to safeguard those options and those choices and decisions so that I can make those in the future. But the procedure is still really expensive, right? And I mean, you have to go through the hormone treatments. You may have to go through more than one cycle even, right?
Yeah, and that's not uncommon.
Yeah, and without a guaranteed payoff.
Right, and I think, you know, if you're going through multiple cycles, you're paying that much money, you kind of want a guaranteed payoff, right?
Sure.
Like, that's not gonna happen, but you're kind of, you know, and some of the things we see online is like, it looks easy. It looks like a simple process. It seems like I can just freeze my eggs, set it and forget it, and, you know, come back whenever I want. And the thing is, eventually you do have to make that decision. And whatever you're waiting for right now, whether it's circumstances or it's your career or your finances, whatever it is, you know, those things may not change in the future. And that was something that Allison, the journalist who writes about assisted reproduction, brought up, was just to go into it knowing that those decisions still have to be made. The option is a great thing to have, and at least you have it, right?
Right.
But at some point, you will have to go back and figure out how to go forward with it.
Lauren Bird, fascinating stuff. Thanks for doing this deep dive. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And hey, thank you for watching here on About That. We'll see you tomorrow.